Next order of business is the roll call of members. Please indicate your presence when the machine is open. If all the members voted, tally the roll.
I'm Earl Harris. Welcome to another edition of Sessions as Representative Blake Johnson and I continue this saga of bringing you inside the curtain on some things that happened at the Statehouse. We are joined by a guest whose first time, kind of. If you have listened to and checked out all 30 plus episodes of Session
36,
thank you, Representative Johnson, you have heard his voice as the beginning of the show. So we are joined today, and he just had a shocked look on his face, so I don't know if contractually we have permission. We are joined today by the Speaker of the House, Representative Todd Huston. He's also the state rep for House District 37, and he's going to talk to us about leading the 100 of us representatives through this process called Session. But before we start with you, Speaker, I do need to make an announcement that Representative Johnson, I noticed a new vehicle in the parking lot that is much bigger than your previous vehicle.
I appreciate you saying something. I have a minivan now with the arrival in like 2 weeks of the next kid. Gave up motorcycles and nice SUVs for a minivan. So it's a good change. It's a good change. Yeah. Minivan they make them a lot cooler than they.
You keep telling yourself that.
Yeah, it's a multi-purpose vehicle. It's not a minivan, a multi-purpose vehicle.
It's a multi-purpose vehicle.
Well, I got to tell you, minivan aside, I was so nervous about this today. I almost wore a tuxedo. For this particular episode.
You just missed. You just missed.
And so then I panicked and overcorrected. So that's the way it is. But we're excited to have you. And like Earl said, so you may not realize this, from the very first episode where it's just me, the opening clip is you calling the roll. And that's where the music's on. So you have been on
How about that?
all 36 episodes of Session.
So the man behind the silky voice.
The man behind the silky
voice.
Yeah.
Sure.
So let's just dive in.
By the way, like if somebody has had a minivan, because I have my two kids, is incredibly functional, and you'll enjoy it. So
I've been driving it for 48 hours, and it's actually been really nice.
Exactly.
Yeah. As a guy with no kids, I'm okay with it.
That's right. That's fair. That's fair.
All right, Speaker Huston, let's dive in here a little bit. You are, as we know, the Speaker of the House, so you guide the 100 of us, the 99 plus yourself, in terms of what happens during session. What's it like being the leader of a big group like that?
I always joke around and I say it's such a unique role because it's like imagine being in charge of HR and of 100 people, none of whom you hired and not one of whom you can fire. So it's a unique relationship. It's great. I think it's really a privilege to have the responsibility, and then second, I really enjoy the people we work with, and it's across both aisles, and you have to kind of manage personalities and issues and those types of things, but it's it's more fun than not. There's always moments of a day or maybe a day or two that's a little more challenging than you like, but it's been a blast, and I learn something new every day about issues and people, and just managing a very unique process that's very hard to explain to somebody who's never done it before.
Well, the thing is, like you joked about HR, but you are actually in charge as Speaker, in your office is in charge of pretty much every dynamic, every piece of the House of Representatives. Mm-hmm. So that is HR, hiring, firing in terms of staff. It's managing calendars and all that. So do you ever think to yourself, man, Democrats should just be in charge? It'd be so much easier.
Oh, there are days, Blake. There are days. And I think like everybody, it depends on which side of the seat you sit on. You think, man, that'd be fun to kind of throw those bombs and do the things that maybe put together some amendments that we'll just say maybe aren't completely responsible. But you can, right? I want to be fair.
As long as they're germane.
Yeah, exactly. But there are days, there are certainly days where what you get surprised by, and what I love is I never know what any day is going to be like, and that makes it both really challenging, but it makes it different and exciting too.
You mentioned it's weird because it's even my friends, people that I've been elected office since I was 29, and talking to my friends from the council to now, it is really hard to explain the job. And I do imagine for you, we feel that already, but then you're in this kind of weird, and you'll probably not like me saying this, but the Speaker of the House, is objectively the most powerful person in the state of Indiana, right? Just from like all traditional measurements, right? Is it kind of lonely at the top?
It's funny you say that. There are days where, I tell people, and I'm one of those people, I take responsibility for things. I'm an owner, and so when we don't have good days, I own it, and it can be kind of lonely because, you feel like you own the failure. I always say we win and I lose is kind of the way I've always kind of viewed things. So it can be. I don't think I had a full appreciation of the job, certainly, until I got into it. But, I always remind people, none of us can ever complain because we ran. Right.
Yeah,
So we chose to run. Yeah. I chose to run to be a state representative. I chose to run to be Speaker of the House. So I would never ever look at somebody and go, boy, I'd like to have sympathy because I chose to do this. But there are moments in time where you're like, I'm not sure this is exactly what I signed up for, but that's okay too.
Yeah.
Well, we would like to offer our help and guidance to you. If you ever get tired of being in the supermajority and want less Republicans, let us know. We'll help you with those.
We're here.
I appreciate that.
Reporting for duty.
Yeah, reporting for those duties. So we're more than halfway through the 2025 legislative session. When we go back a little bit in time and look to leading to this, what were some of your legislative priorities for us?
Going into this session, Earl? Yeah. So, look, first of all, it's a different session, I think, for all of us because we haven't had a new administration in 8 years. So, just trying to work through that, working with a new administration. One very familiar with, obviously, Governor Braun. He was part of our caucus, part of our body a few years ago. But that just adds a different dynamic that we're all kind of working through. But look, we've always focused on, obviously in Indiana, we want to ensure we have a balanced budget, that we're fiscally responsible, that we make the investments we think need to be made throughout the state government, throughout the state. We've done a lot of work together, bipartisan, on healthcare, and that's obviously, two big agenda bills for us. We've done a lot of work together on energy. Housing is a big issue. For us, obviously, education is always going to be a top line issue. It's where about half the budget, stuff like that. So, it's interesting because most years, you almost feel like you have a little bit of the issues, maybe some peripheral issues will get in there, but you can pretty much know what the big 6 to 10 issues are going to be. And that's the way it was this year, those kind of highlighting those.
How do you work on legislation that's going to be offered in those arenas? And I'm going to add to that also in terms of which legislators you want to hand those over to.
Sure. Obviously, you're a little bit more likely to go to a chair of a committee for some of that, just because they are the most tend to be the most subject knowledgeable. And then they can kind of navigate the committee process, as you guys know. So, we typically, I always say for me, post Labor Day is when the next session really kicks in, the amount of intensity. So you just start meeting with people, you start meeting with members and stakeholders and kind of see what people are talking about, what top line agendas are. Obviously, in an election year, you get to feel those at people's doors and throughout campaign. So, we heard loud and clear this year, about, in particular, we heard loud and clear about healthcare expenses, so from voters. So you kind of use all that to kind of inform it, and you think about what policies you want to work on. As you guys know, there are a lot of years where you don't get all the policies you want in one year, so you come back for another bite of the apple. So we just have kind of used that to inform the process.
So let's talk a little bit, because Blake and I are Democrats, and we live on the opposite, or the downside of that whole supermajority, superminority thing. How do you work in terms of looking at the relationship with the other party in terms of getting legislation passed? Because the reality is all 100 of your members are not going to be yeses or nos on a vote. So how do you work in terms of being across the line with Leader Giaquina and the rest of us?
Yeah. So first of all, I always have to be, I know I've said this to each of you individually. Look, I lead a caucus of 70, so that means I have 69 mouths to feed. So that's that in and of itself is a challenge. Look, it's really one of the things I've tried to work on, and I'd love your guys' feedback. Is look, I do think there's a huge value. I want that place to be a place where we don't all agree, but we can all get along. and that the culture in the building is that, hey, we're gonna have a disagreements on substantive issues that we just fundamentally disagree on. That's okay. Yeah. But that we're going to kind of work together the very best we can. I really stress it to our chairs to work with their with a minority ranking member to make sure they're communicating with them. You deserve that respect. I try to show that same respect to Leader Giaquina to say, I'm a no surprise guy. I hate surprises. I mean, I feel like if we're going to do something, we should be, I don't do quiet very well. So we should be as upfront. And I think we've grown the last couple of years. I've been happy about the fact. I think you guys have had more bills hit the floor. You've had more bills get all the way to the governor's desk. And it makes for a better environment. Like I tell people all the time, I never want to walk in that chamber and it feels like a cesspool. I want it to be a place where, again, good people, 100 people from 100 different areas of state with 100 different backgrounds. It is not going to be uniformity, right? It's not uniformity within either of our two caucuses. And so how can we make it a place that like most of us look around and go, may disagree, but get along. And I use the example, I said it last night to a couple of our members, like it's so important that we get to know each other because you can't hate somebody you know. Yeah. I mean, that's been my experience in life. And if we get to know each other, we can disagree, but we can do it in a civil way.
Mr. Speaker, it is a real question for you. I've read some polling lately in Pew about how like 63% of Republicans and 61% of Democrats view the other side not just as wrong, but immoral. Yeah. And 1 in 5 on each side say the other side's evil. How do we, in our roles, and you atop the pyramid of power, how do we confront that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like this. Yeah. I mean, I think, part of the problem and all that is, and I think we may have talked about this earlier before we started, is that I think that the challenge that takes place is that, we all get in our own echo chambers. And like, if I don't know anybody else that's different than me, it's easier for me to prescribe that person's immoral or just, just wrong. And I think one of the joys of our jobs is we get to meet with people all the time who have different experiences from us, who have different opinions than us. And that's why really, when I meet with groups, I really say, you need to get involved. You need to get, one of the things our members will tell you when I've used this line a lot. Well, everybody I know, and my common response is, you need to meet more people. Like, go meet more people, because if everybody believes that same way, then you probably need to meet more people. So I think that's it. I think it's a little bit of modeling that says, I can disagree with you. We can have different views on education or energy or healthcare or pick the subject matter. But at the end of the day, like, hey, I can go eat dinner with you, talk sports, and have a good time.
There is something to that, and I know, not to get into Washington, D.C., because we all see that on TV all the time, but there is that whole relationship thing. One of the things I talked about when I ran because of my background and my family background is relationships equal resources, and knowing everyone in a more personal way. I'm on government regulatory reform, and we had a dinner recently, and Tim O'Brien told me something about Corey Criswell and how he was head security for Rascal Flatts. And so learning those type of things, I think, helps those relationships.
I love the fact, this is kind of funny because we all it probably drives the general public crazy. It's easier for me to say because I'm not on committees anymore. But, those 156 committee rooms, you have to get to know the people on your committee, right? Yeah. You're in there really tight. Yeah. And I think, the worst session I've ever had, by far and away, it happened to be my first session, was the COVID session, because it broke relationships, right? You weren't spending time outside the building. You weren't really, everybody, it was intensity and intenseness anyway. But you didn't get a chance to get to know. We had new members come in, and I'd have people say, I never even got to know that person on either side, And I try to meet the new members all across the entire body, Senate included. But I think that's just so important.
I want to share. So I came in. That was my first year. Was COVID session. And I'd had like a 6-month window because of how I came in before the first session happened. And I'll say, one of the ways you did that is you called me and talked on the phone with me for 45 minutes. I was brand new, member of the Super Minority Democrat, and you called and just wanted to get to know each other a little bit, and I'll never forget that. I mean, and to your point, like, we will have moments where we disagree somewhat vehemently, and you have those debates on the floor and those fights on the floor. But I think that was kind of instructive on the way you were going to lead, is that you wanted to actually. I mean, you had no reason to, from an objective standpoint, that, like, I was coming in with no experience or anything like that, and you still took the time. I thought that was pretty great.
Look, I would tell you, like, you guys, obviously, I'm sure, get frustrated with me, and I will have moments where I will get frustrated at something taking place, but I always try to remind myself, is that, look, you have jobs to do, you have constituents you have to serve, and that's an incredibly important part of the process, right? And there are times where, like, we all want to sit around and go, boy, I'm the nicest guy in the whole world or whatever, and that, that's just not it's not a realistic expectation, right? But I think, if we can say that, hey, I know, I can go talk to anybody in the House floor, and they're going to show me respect and civility. That's what we should all strive for, right? And because I want our members to go home and talk about the fact that Blake Johnson, Earl Harris, Phil Giaquin, Greg Porter, Mitch Gore, Carolyn Jackson are really great people, right? And that's I think we need more of that. We need more people that can acknowledge that. I always say, people when I give speeches, like, somebody will go to me and say, Mr. Speaker, I hope you never, ever give in or negotiate. I'm like, you've never been married or you've never worked for somebody if that's how you're walking through life. So
we're in the second half. Biggest surprise for you the first half?
I would say it was a kind of quiet. I don't know how you guys felt. It was a little quieter first half for whatever reason. I don't know if that was just because with the new administration and it just was a little quieter probably in the first half, which means, like, the second half's been a little antsier. I think maybe our colleagues in the Senate and maybe us in the House didn't vet everything as perfectly, or people are waiting to the second half to kind of raise their hands and go, there might be a problem with that. So this session, the second half always has a different level of intensity to it, as you guys know. I mean, you're taking votes that sometimes mean whether the bill's going to go to the governor's desk or not. But I would say that's probably been, maybe I just forget year over year. But it started like the first day. Well, it started over when we took the week break between the first two halves. I mean, my phone was lit up like a Christmas tree on people trying to work through things.
I want to touch on a little something you got into. We are under a new administration. I was elected at the same time Holcomb was. So, new administration. Braun was on in the House. He was on Ways and Means, because I remember that's where I first had interaction with him on Ways and Means. Does it help to have a governor, in terms of those relations and working, to have a governor that has been a part of the legislature? Does that make it easier, more difficult? Where does that fall?
I'm not sure. Every governor just has a different feel, and I think we're working with Governor Braun. Is look, it's a tough job. Always want to begin with that. It's always a tough job, and they're trying to get. We kind of don't do the governor any favors, in the sense that we start session before they even get here, and tell them they need a budget, like 2 days into their term. So I think it helps that Governor Braun has legislative background. He's familiar with the process. I think for a lot of people who walk into the legislature, the hardest thing to learn, right, isn't the policy, it's the process. Yeah. So I think he understands that. But where he weighs in and how they want to do things, I think they're adapting and we're adapting. But we just try and keep the line of communications open. And again, they're all friends.
Let me ask, this is kind of a left field question. So you come into the legislature when you first get elected. You're a policy guy. I know that about you. You care about smart policy, and you're thoughtful about that. Were you ever sitting there going, when you first got there, someday I want to be speaker. I want to really control this agenda in a bigger way and all that? Or has this kind of happened to you instead of, you feel like you've guided it?
I want to be fair. Like, I don't love when people tell me, Todd, people talking to me and they think I should run for office. I always find that's normally like it's normally like they ask their mother or they ask their significant other, should they could run?
I should run, right?
I should run, right? For me, it's funny. When I got in, I love policy. I really I always jokingly say I put up with the politics to do the policy. that, I really was just, my first handful of years, my kids were younger. When I was elected, my daughter was 12, my son was 10. And I had a great opportunity to be on the Ways and Means, carry bills. It was a great thing. It was a great place for me in my life. In 2018, a terrible accident took place with one of my legislative mentors and Dr. Brown, and that put me in the Ways and Means chair. Shortly thereafter, Speaker Bosman said that was going to be his last term, and it was just, again, I don't want to act like I was drafted, but some people, we talked, and I kind of raised my hand. I was elected Speaker. So, I've always just tried to tell people, be good where your feet are, and God will take care of the rest. And I don't know, every time my career planning is a complete and utter mess if you look at my career. So, I've always just kind of been available and tried to be good where you are, and everything will take care of itself.
How did being co-chair of Ways and Means help you in terms of that transition to Speaker?
It was huge. I would say, just having that deep understanding of the budget helps today. It's probably one of my favorite things to work on. Probably drives Chairman Thompson crazy. But it gave me an opportunity to really understand the budget. But the biggest thing it gave me was an opportunity to work with so many members. So many members. Like across within our caucus, I love Greg Porter, and part of that's from the 2 years I worked with Greg as minority ranking member. Just a great relationship. So I think I love the policy aspect. I always said, like, that may have been the funnest job I'll ever had in the legislature, was chairing Ways and Means. But what probably helped me more than anything else was it built relationships with more of our caucus, with more of the body as a general rule, and then gave me an opportunity to kind of prepare myself for that next step, because there's really no practice for being a member is unique, as you guys have moved up, and then being a chair is unique, and then being a speaker is unique. So you just kind of have to learn as you go.
So as the person who was leading the process of the budget as the co-chair of Ways and Means, craziest request to put in the budget?
I don't know if I could say one crazy request. The funniest thing that always comes to you is, like, people come up and go, I'm sorry for wasting your time, but we just need $5 million. And I'm like, oh, well. And I think what I didn't realize, and I always tell this about my mother, my mother was not super excited when I chose to run for elected office. You come from a family, so your mother, who was a tremendous woman, probably supported you. I don't know where you were, Blake, or your family
My mom's
supported.
not excited about it.
Yeah, I would say my mom's not excited about it too. She's awesome and my biggest fan. But I think one day she said, she kind of made some comment about, all you do is, tell people yes. When you're chairman of Ways and Means, what you realize is, like, you tell everybody no. I mean,
know.
like, yeah, I know. and like, it's funny because I'll never forget, that was the 2019 budget was really like this year's budget. Really like this year's budget. And I remember it was some crazy number, I'm going to forget it now, but it was like $2.5 billion request. And literally there was like less than $20 million of like what you might consider some discretionary funding. It was minutely small. And so you spent a ton of time telling people no. And you learn to say no with a lot of different ways. And Senator Kenley gave me a great advice. He said, don't surprise people. Like, so if you're going to tell them no, say no. And then I remember the first time we released the House budget online, I called people ahead of time. I said, like, look, we didn't tell you definitively yes or no, it's not in. Now you need to go. You can certainly go advocate with Senator Mishler in the Senate. I totally understand. That's part of the process. But it was just like, you just get used to. I'm sorry, you don't get used to it. You just are surprised by how much. One, people are like, it's just $3 million, and two, you're like, I learned how to say no pretty well.
And it's always entertaining to me, at least, when the response begins with, "That's a great idea, but."
Yeah.
Okay, fell off the cliff.
And I think that's the hardest part in all this, and you guys have known from your experiences, sometimes it is a great idea. I mean, it's just the 6th great idea, and you can only fund the first 5, and that's the super challenging thing. I mean, Blake, I'm sure you felt like this when you're on the majority in the council, right? I mean, a lot of people bring really good ideas. If you had some infinite pot of money, you'd go, that makes some sense. We just don't have that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the second half here. You alluded to it a little bit and said how it's a little bit busier, a little bit more movement and grooving. What is your theory in making that shift from first half to second half, dealing with bills that came from the other side of the building?
Well, it's just not the 100 of us at that point, right? We invite the other 50 in. And so that's, from a member's perspective, I always thought that was harder, because you've worked your bills and you know your bills, and now all of a sudden you're getting bills that you've never seen before, and you got to get up to speed on them on a short period of time. I'm the same way. I've got to get up to speed on a whole bunch of bills in a short period of time. And then you just have the different, it's amazing the different worldview, and people will say, well, you're 2 super majorities. But there's a different culture and worldview between the Senate and the House. And I think is what really makes our system of government a beautiful thing, is it's just very unique in that way. So you may have super majorities, but you have, just differences. I mean, it's amazing. We'll get bills and they'll pass our side 50-0, and we'll go, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And then, they'll get bills, they'll pass our side 100-0, and they'll go, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And so, it's just it's a super fascinating dynamic that takes place. And one of the things I like to work through, because I like the people over there, and just kind of work to get people into the right place. But I mean, look, you get personalities involved. Everybody thinks that I always remind people, Moses didn't come down with 3 tablets. He came down with this 2, and your legislative agenda wasn't on the 3rd, right? I mean, but that we occasionally draft our own bills and think they're pretty spectacular, and other people get a chance to take a look at them.
Mr. Speaker, I think we're probably beyond the time that we asked for you to contribute to us today. So I have 2 quick things. One, I've noticed that in Congress, the Speaker has a much bigger gavel, and I just want to know, does that bother you? Like, do you think we should have a bigger gavel up there?
No, I am quite satisfied.
Okay, it just
almost
easier to manage.
Yes.
Easier to manage. And then secondly, I think, as you, in this role that you're in, we often ask the question of folks that come on, like, what do you want people to know about the House of Representatives that maybe they wouldn't know just by catching us on the evening news or even watching a committee hearing? You're in a particularly unique role to answer this question, so I'd be interested in what you think. What should people know about the House of Representatives?
The quality of the people, the quality of the 100 people. I think when you come into this, and maybe Earl, because of what your father did, you had a better understanding. But, before I was elected, I probably would have said, boy, wonder what the motivations of those people are, wonder why they're here. And I found, like, the quality of the people and the reason they're here, and they really are focused on serving their constituency, has been, I think it's underreported. Nobody's ever going to feel sympathetic or probably do food drives for politicians. I get all that, but I just have been blown away on both sides of the aisle in both chambers. Just the quality of the people, and I think the heart of the people to get to the right spot. Again, where there's disagreements, that's part of the process, and it's good for our chamber, it's good for our state. There are those types of disagreements. But I don't know about you guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But I've just been really pleasantly surprised by a great group of people. I feel like I'm blessed to serve with 99 other people who are really terrific.
So as you're standing up there at the front, all of us are looking in your direction. You're looking at us. What thoughts are going through your mind?
That's a great. You know what, Earl? Listen, I was wondering if you're really worth your muster here, and that question, because that's true. You're one of the handful of people that have that perspective of looking out at all of us.
Does this mean I get to stay on the podcast with you?
My gosh, no! Now I want to stick around a little longer.
There you go. He just earned his keep. It's funny you say that, because somebody asked me that this morning, kind of that similar question. I said, first of all, what you realize is that I'm always super impressed with the members that are totally focused on what the what is being said.
I am not that person. I
Yeah.
am
No,
not that
but I
person.
mean, like, because you can see that people are super antsy, and like I said, it is like I have the view of 99 people. I'm looking at who's talking to who. I'm kind of who's paying attention. What's kind of the body language. Our team just gives me heck about the fact I have no poker face. I'm completely impatient. I am wildly impatient. Everybody.
Sometimes I watch when I go back and look at my speeches. I watch the speaker's face in my speech rather than watch.
I mean, literally, I am like I have no poker face. I am impatient.
We've noticed.
What am I thinking about most of the time is, why are we still here? Like, I mean, like what are we doing? So like that's one area I have a lot of growth in is patience isn't my strongest attribute. And I'm also like, it's funny because like there are days and it happens on both sides where I'm like, I want to go make the argument. Yeah. Like I want I mean, I try not to intercede. I did the other day on something, but I try not to intercede, but like I'm listening all the time. Whether people say sometimes I am. I'm looking at my phone or something like that, but I have to listen. But there are days like, I wish I could answer that question. Yeah. I think I could do, but
it's easy to tell when you're feeling that way because you really are. You see you like kind of lean forward a little bit, and you're like,
you have that facial expression, like you're holding it back, but it wants to come out.
We are certainly out of time. So but I want to end a certain way today.
Well, can I ask one more question?
Oh, go ahead.
This
It's
is
his
the
time.
most
Listen,
important question I have for you.
Okay.
Favorite Democrat, Earl Harris or Blake Johnson? And keep in mind, I've known you longer.
Good question.
Thank you.
We won't make you answer.
Here's
Here's how I want to end. Your voice always starts every episode, so I think I want to do it this way, and you got to second me. Mr. Speaker, I move you. We do now adjourn.
Second.
So moved. We're adjourned.
There it is. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Awesome.